Good evening and welcome to Reiki Topics for our series Reiki Topics and Techniques, a 4-episode series with a panel of Reiki wisdom holders who will answer your questions throughout this series. We have with us Karen Cagg, a Reiki Master Teacher of the Arkansas Reiki Institute. We have Kathleen Johnson, Reiki Master Teacher of UniverSoul Heart Reiki in Bloomsburg, PA. Karen's in Bentonville, Arkansas. We have Barbara Rose, RN and RMT, Reiki Master Teacher of Rose Wellness Network in Knoxville, Tennessee. And Andrea Kennedy of Mainstream Reiki in Saline, Michigan. My name is Steven. I'm the host and moderator. And we had our first episode last week. The replay is available. I put the link on the post. We have 2 more episodes after this, next Monday, and then the following Monday, the 8th of October and the 15th of October, 5 p.m. Pacific, here on Facebook Live. Thank you, ladies, for coming together this evening. Okay. I think we had a question of symbols. Was there a symbol question?
Yes. What my students always ask me during class when I go over why we should keep especially Reiki 2, keep those symbols secret. Then my students say, well, why keep them secret if you can go on the internet and see them everywhere? And people are wearing like jewelry with them on it and stuff. And so I was curious to see what you guys tell your students.
Well, I'll go first if nobody minds. First of all, I use the word private as opposed to secret, only because the word secret, conjures up, interesting. Yeah. Exactly. Like,
I never thought of that. Yeah.
Secret societies and all that. So I like to use the word private, and I do go over this pretty thoroughly when I teach Reiki 2. Even though I believe that they need to be kept private, the reason for that, the way I teach it, is because, first of all, they're sacred. And I think keeping them private until you've been attuned to them or you've learned how to use them is proper for something that is sacred. I think it shows reverence and respect. So that's my attitude about that. However, I know that you can get them anywhere on the internet. And also there's a lot of Reiki practitioners who are very, very good at what they do and wonderful people who don't share my opinion about it. And that's perfectly all right. Everybody has a different attitude about it. So what I tell my students is I give them my take on it and why I feel the way I do about it. But then I also say that because they are sacred, the only thing I'm asking of them is to maintain the sacredness of the symbols in a way that feels right for them, whether it's the way I do it or something else. But as long as it feels right for them and it resonates and they're maintaining the sacredness, I feel it's all good. So that's how I do it.
I like that. I really like the use of the word private. I hadn't considered that.
How do you do it, Karen?
Similar. I tell them that I keep them. I know that they're not really secret, but that it's something sacred and special, that it's not something. I feel like some people, especially now this is just me personally, but like wearing the jewelry or things like that, it seems almost like I don't know the word. It's like bragging or more for show, and to me that there's something sacred and that they should be like something that respect, so that you use respect when you're drawing them, and keeping them in your heart, I think. Mm-hmm. So mainly for the sacredness of it, the seriousness of it, and that it's not something for decoration or for show. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, look at me, I'm a Reiki practitioner. I'm good at. I'm not saying that that's what everybody does, but that's how it feels to me. If so, I just encourage them. Same as you, like that they not everybody has that same opinion, but that it is something special, and so it should be treated as such.
Right, I agree.
Yeah. How about you guys, Barbara?
I feel the same way. I took Reiki 2 in 1989, and my teacher told me that once you learn the symbols, you were supposed to burn them. And I just couldn't do it. I thought, what if I forget, over time, I forget the symbols. And so I felt so guilty about keeping one sheet with the first symbols on it. And then it's like I still have that sheet. And so I talk about that. It's because at one time there was just this thought that they were private, they were secret, they were private. And now we know that they are all over the internet. So I tell people, but I suggest that they keep them private too, because they don't have the meaning that they have to the person who's attuned to them. Right. And I guess somewhat like a minister who has special prayers, he wouldn't show them to everyone. If he was going to do something, special at a birth or whatever, he wouldn't have these all laid out for everyone to see or be talking about them. So they're appropriate for what the work we do. So, and I like the word private rather than secret too. So that's my take on it.
There's also a school of thought too about how our consciousness can affect the symbols. And I guess what I mean by that is if the symbols were just an everyday thing and they were plastered everywhere, boy, I mean, to me, they would really lose that special quality about them. And then you would have all kinds of people attuned to Reiki or not saying, oh, well, that one looks like it's, I don't know, X, Y, or Z, or I think it does this. And and to have all the input on what the symbols may or may not mean out there could further misinformation about them and could just kind of water the whole thing down. But I agree with all of you. I think it's a sign of respect. It's not like we're trying to hide anything from anyone, but they have a special meaning. And so to me, I think it is respectful to, use them as practitioners in a more private way. But like Kathleen said, I mean, that's just my take on it. So, I've seen tattoos and jewelry and all of that. And, I don't judge other people for what they choose to do, but I'll certainly share my own opinion about it. But because who knows, in 10 years, maybe I'll get a tattoo or something. Probably not, but who knows? But I agree with you all.
Students also ask me, sort of in that same vein, like why did the symbols look different? Somehow, why are they drawn differently sometimes when they see them? Mm-hmm. And I tell them, well, Mrs. Takata didn't let students take notes for how long? Yeah, for years and years. So, and Barbara, I think that's a legitimate fear. Like, I may forget. Just, it's almost like Gus. But I tell them also that what's important to me in the drawing of the symbol is the intention, that the symbols work through the intention. So that's what's important.
It's also been reported that Takata would even draw them differently in different classes. But when you, it's my understanding that when you draw it, however you draw it, and then you're attuned to it, that's what you're attuned to. Right. So, which really makes sense to me. So, but the intention, I agree with that.
So do I. Especially when the students get a glimpse of the time distance symbol. I don't know what your responses are, but I get this collective gasp, like. So I always tell them my story. I said, look, it's really all right. Karen, what you said is perfect. I always say it's about your intention. And you can even say the name of it to yourself, quietly, and put your intention behind it as you're feverishly trying to write it the correct way. But it took me 6 months after becoming attuned to Reiki 2 before I really felt comfortable with it. And I was like a first grader. One day I said, well, enough is enough. I have to sit down and learn how to do this. So I just sat down with a notebook, just like when learning to write. And I sat there and did it over and over and over again until now I can do it in my sleep. But it took a while. That is a complicated, symbol. And my students are always like, you get that collective gasp and that look of horror, and so.
I've had a student once. She said, "This doesn't fit on my hand. Can I draw it down my arm?" And I'm like, "It's okay."
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's funny. Barbara or Andrea, do you ever have that reaction from your students when you teach it?
Oh, sure. It's funny that when I first moved to Tennessee, I had just become a Reiki master teacher. So I wanted to connect with someone else and kind of be mentored. And this woman, a friend of mine, mentored me, and she said, "Oh, I can't remember any of those." So they had them on big pieces of paper, and they would tape them to the person's back and just trace them. And I said, "Well, the attention is there." So it was so funny because I had done whatever whoever said, writing it over and over and over because I was going to learn that thing no matter what. And then my first teacher actually taught in Japan and came back when I took level 3 and said there was a mistake in the writing because Frank R. Javapetter and William Rand had really found Dr. Usui's original manuscripts. And the story I heard is they go to this Reiki master teacher who is also a magnificent calligrapher and did, is this the symbol for that? And he would go, huh, or, And so they finally got what it's supposed to look like. But here in this class, there were people from all over and said, wow, we've been writing it wrong all this time. And it's like, yes, but did it work? Yes, it worked. And so it doesn't matter the method you're in, your intention, connecting with the qualities of the symbol are what's important.
Exactly.
But I laughed so hard when she said, and we're old ladies, it's hard for us to remember all these things. I said, that's why I never threw out my symbols because I was afraid at some point I'd be an old lady and I couldn't remember too. So,
wow. When I show them the symbols, they're a little awestruck with that, and we have to learn this by when, and but I take them through the drawing. I'll put up my thing and I have a whole story about what it all is, and when I tell them that and then along with the numbers, it's pretty easy. I mean, I probably have students watching and they're like, well, it's easy for her to say. I don't think it's so easy, but actually, I mean, they pick it up really pretty quickly. And then the other tip that I tell them is as they draw it, say the numbers. Go ahead and say the numbers. I know that helps me, or helped me. And then the other thing is if they mess up, look at the drawing, look at it again, refresh their memory, and then they have to start all over from the very beginning. And you do that a few times and you've got it down. So at least that's what I've seen in my classes. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the starting over thing. I say that too. Just start all over again. Don't try to fix it midstream because then you'll end up getting even more confused.
Yes.
I've seen people go. They're erasing it in the air.
Too.
Erasing in the air.
I do that too. I thought it was just me. I'm erasing in the air. Okay, that's one.
Well, this is another question that related to the symbols. Do you, because I've done it both ways, do you send the symbols to the students ahead of time ever? Or do you wait and give it to them in class?
I give it to them in class, after
Yeah.
the attunement.
Because I have, I know some people send them ahead, and I've done that a couple of times, but then I was worried, what if I send it ahead for them to start practicing and then they don't come?
Right.
So, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never sent them ahead. I don't think I've ever done that. I usually give it to them right before lunch so they can practice during lunch hour. And then immediately after lunch is when we do the attunement. So that's how I do it. But I've never sent them ahead because what you said, Karen, maybe they won't be taking the class. And then it's like, oh, now it's out there. But
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I do a 2-day class. And so the end of the first day, we briefly go over just the introduction of the 3 symbols. I don't go into depth about their use or anything, but that's about the last, I would say, 20 to 30 minutes of class. We do an introduction to the 3 symbols and then show them how to draw them. And then they can take them home that night and practice if they want to. But like you, Kathleen, the test is after lunch the next day. So I take a little bit longer at lunch so that they can eat and then get some practice time. We just do the evaluation, right then, and then do the attunement. So it seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, it works for me. That's all I can say. Right? Whatever works. How you doing, Stephen?
Do you have any questions coming?
Ready to move on to another question. What's another top question out there that you ladies are getting?
Well, I'll talk about this one for a minute. I was in a class years ago. I was actually repeating a Reiki 1 and 2 class because, I like to do that kind of thing. So there was a woman in the class and she was asking the Reiki teacher, she was concerned because she was on medications. She had, I believe it was either fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome. And so she was on some heavy drugs at the time, but wanted to help people. And she had the question about, is it okay to take Reiki when she is trying to heal herself of this, condition? Is it okay to take Reiki and then offer Reiki to other people before she's healed or in her current state? So, and I've heard that question, a few different ways through the years. So the instructor, the Reiki teacher at the time, and I agreed. And my answer is that, this source energy, this Reiki energy is not going to penalize us, for what we might be going through and enduring. My goodness, there's always people to help. I just can't even imagine for a person to say, oh, well, I'm not good enough to be able to help somebody else with Reiki. It makes me bristle at the actual even thought of that. So there are so many people to help. And so we all are invited to do that. I completely agree with that. So this past summer, I had to put that to the test because, we have clients and we see people and we teach all the time. And then this summer, I actually had a period. I had a lot of stress in my life with selling a house and trying to find a new house and buying a house. And it was crazy. And unlike my normal life, I actually had a severe headache that lasted 3 days. And that's totally not like me. But I remember going in, I had a full day of clients and I thought, well, what am I going to do? Do I call them and try and reschedule them? That would be I didn't want to do that. And I remembered that class and I remembered the answer that I felt was fair and correct. And I decided, well, I'm going to have to do what I advised, So I went ahead and I kept all my appointments. And I remember standing there at the Reiki table with these clients. And all I really wanted to do, and I mean, confessions of a Reiki master here, but all I really wanted to do was go crawl in the corner and close my eyes. I felt so terrible. And then, of course, all the thoughts go through your head like, oh, I'm doing a disservice to this person. This isn't, maybe I'm not being fair. Maybe I did the wrong thing. So, the whole mind chatter, all of that. but I kept going back to the answer from that other Reiki class. So it was fine. I made it through. It was fine. I don't think anybody knew that I felt so terribly. And then it was a couple days, and I looked on my online schedule, and one of those clients had been a new client, and she scheduled a next session. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I think it was just for the next week. So she comes in the next week, and do you know, she was so, she had told me how, I don't know what the word would be, incredulous about the power of that Reiki session that she had. She had a huge shift from that. And I have to tell you, it was probably one of the most powerful sessions that somebody's ever had. Wow. And I said to myself after that, don't ever think that it's you that much ever again. And, you know, we know it isn't us when we give Reiki. We know we're not doing it. But I thought that day, I thought, maybe this isn't right. You know, maybe I'm not present enough. And to hear the feedback was just so reassuring to me. And I like to tell that story to my students because they often will think things like that. Well, what are there special foods that I have to eat? What's my responsibility about my own health? And, you know, and they can really worry about that. But, you know, if you have a sniffle or a cough or a headache or something, I mean, I would say it'll all work out. Just trust the Reiki. It'll all work out.
Beautiful.
That's a great story. I'm so glad
That's a great story.
Oh, thanks.
I'd like to. I love that story, Andrea. Thank you for sharing that. I like Confessions of a Reiki Master. So
Yes.
maybe we should change the title of the show.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yes.
Hey, let's do it.
It's like, no, I don't think so. Anyway, I'm gonna chime in on that question as well. First of all, if we wait until we are healed to offer healing to others, there'd be no healers in the world at all, right?
That's right.
So, because no one is ever completely healed, that is a lifelong journey. It's always a work in progress. And so forget that. I mean, and also speaking from experience, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia.
That's what happened to me last time.
Okay.
She'll be back in a second, I'll bet.
Yeah.
It's
For an old broad. So, and
okay,
so,
you froze a little bit. You froze
Yeah,
a little bit. You froze a little bit at you were diagnosed with fibromyalgia and then you froze. What did you say? We missed part of it.
And okay, so you're still interested then. That's good. All right. So
Yes.
yes, I was diagnosed 24 years ago, and I really believe that Reiki turned my life around with that. My lifestyle, my health is so much better now than it used to be, and I don't take any medications for it, none, and a lot of supplements, but it's all natural, and I do a lot of Reiki, and I do pretty well for an old broad, truly. So, but no, I would have never thought back when I was taking Reiki that it would be a detriment that if I had fibromyalgia, like, oh, I can't take Reiki because I have that and I might hurt somebody. I never looked at it that way. And I find it interesting that your client or your student would think that, you know, but to each his own. And I think we're all in a process of healing always throughout our lives. And I think as long as we're actively involved in our own healing, that's what counts. We're doing our own work. We're actively involved in working with our issues and our health issues or whatever the issues may be. But as long as we're doing that, I think that, yes, we can offer healing to others because it starts with us. And then it just goes out from there. It's the ripples. You know, you toss the stone into the pond and there's the ripples. But the ripple begins with us. We're the stone. Boom. And then we start the ripples. So That's kind of how I feel about it. But yeah, and there's days when I'm thinking, oh boy, like some days are tougher than others, but I always know that Reiki knows. Reiki knows. And I know that I'm not doing it. The energy's flowing through me regardless of how I feel. And I usually feel better after a session. So if I didn't feel so great when I started, I feel a whole lot better afterwards. So yeah.
I could chime in and say I kind of understand why that student would ask that question, because I've struggled with self-esteem issues, and it's an ego thing. It's getting in our own way. I've had some health issues, and I didn't want to tell anybody because I felt embarrassed until I was talking with one of my Reiki teachers, Karen Harrison, and she said, "You are human, and the Reiki, that doesn't have anything to do with, you know." She says you're going to have health issues, and I think that's actually, like you said, that's part of the journey. But it's ego, you know, like, oh, I'm unworthy. I'm unworthy for this Reiki to even channel the Reiki. So I think that it's a self-esteem issue that you worry, like, oh, because Reiki is a gift. And sometimes I think people struggle, or at least now I'm speaking for myself, but I struggle with that. Am I really worthy of this gift? And yes, we are all worthy of this gift. That's the magic of it. So I get that.
Yeah. What do you think, Barbara?
Yeah, I agree. I've been under the weather, and I've done Reiki, and I always feel much better after I do it. I had some. Let's see, a PhD person tested my energy. I went through this whole testing process, and she taught a class as well, more for healing touch people, but she accepted me in that class. And one of the things she said is, for the testing, it doesn't come out too well if people have major heart disease. So I wondered about that. If anybody's had major heart disease and does Reiki, because she said it will throw it off, energy work. So, but that's a recent thing. I never thought about it before, because I've never had anything, tremendous happen to me. It's just little things, headaches or whatever, or pain or nausea, and it all goes away. Just doing the work. Just as soon as you get that higher vibration, you connect with it. It's like it goes through your channel. I feel it's kind of like an inner rinse. It's not quite as deep as the client gets, but it gets enough to get the cobwebs out of there and get you healed. So it's kind of fun. Well, and I've told people who are sick too that come to class, unless they're contagious, come along, because they'll feel better. And I had one lady who had just broke up with her husband, and she wasn't feeling well, and she said, I almost canceled, and then she didn't, and she says, wow, I feel so good now. So it's like, yeah, there's no reason to not take it or do it, I feel.
I can answer the question on the heart disease. I just had a stent put in my heart in July. And so I had a 90% blockage. That was what I was talking about. The oh, I'm embarrassed. Like, here I'm a Reiki master. And what do you mean I have a 90%? I'm 54. How do I have a blockage in my heart? And I'm not really sure. I know that I think that since the stent, because the clients that I've treated, I think that it may be stronger, honestly. But I think that may have to do more with like the clearing of those ego issues that I had. But if the physical disease is a manifestation of energy blocks, I have had a blocked heart. I mean, I started Reiki in 2012, and I had 40 years of, well, we won't go into that, to get to that state, and it takes a while for that to clear. But that's interesting that she said that, because there may be something to that it's easier to open. It seems like it's easier to open and be that clear and open channel. I feel like a more clear and open channel since I feel like a cyborg, actually. So I've got this stent in my heart. But yeah, there may be something to that. But the way we say it is that the longer we practice Reiki, it seems like the stronger it gets and the more intuitive we become. And it may just be that. It may just be our heart opening. And so maybe there's something to that. That's interesting.
It is interesting. I've never heard that before either. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she found with testing. Sure, her goal is to test several thousand people. And she found, since she has, you all hooked up to probes and stuff, and she has you run energy from one hand to the other, up and down, different ways. She says she's just noticed that people who have major heart disease, and so I'm thinking more like cardiomyopathy or something where, your heart's not pumping out the blood and working. She said that they can't maneuver the energy as well. Because, I when I talk about chakras, I always talk about a chakra that's 4.5, and that's the divine heart. So I kind of divide the heart into two, and the divine one is the one we connect to. So the heart is the major organ that we're connecting, that's connecting to the divine. So if there's major issues, I think it may interfere, but I certainly wouldn't stop it until, I would just go for the healing, start working on myself and open up. It's funny, when I first started Reiki, and my teacher, I would go to all the Reiki shares, and my teacher always worked on my heart. And my mother died of heart disease. She needed a heart transplant. So she died when I was 10. She was only 30 years old. So I thought, wow, I got to really work on this heart. And so my teacher would put her hands on me, and it's like just all this boo-hoo and heart issues. And it wasn't heart disease, but, if things remain in stagnant, then they can develop into a disease. So I think, as a healer, I always consider my heart to, heart health is being really important, and try to open up and do the self-care, self-love, so that I have it as open as possible.
Beautiful.
This is fun.
Yeah. On this physical state question, so during one class, somebody even said, well, what would happen if, you had somebody who wanted to learn Reiki and they didn't have hands? What if they had both arms amputated? Could they then do Reiki? So I hadn't ever thought of that. But again, my answer was, well, this energy is not going to punish people, for, the state that they're in. So, we learn the Japanese Reiki technique, Gyoshiho, sending Reiki with the eyes. And I share with my students often that one thing that I do when I sit down at the table, the head of the table, before a session is, I do a number of things. One of them is that I give thanks that all my personal energies are set aside. And I actually, in my mind, almost see my hand coming like this and pulling a whole framework out of myself and setting it to the side. And then I really just see myself as just light. And then I, in my mind, do this as though I'm unzipping and just letting everything come through with no resistance whatsoever. And so in that way, talking about the heart, we could, I'm sure, just channel Reiki right through our heart, just sort of in that way, just to sort of unzip and let it flow. So I'm just a huge believer. Anybody can do Reiki.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Me too.
Yeah. And something I was thinking of when you were speaking, Andrea, is even if someone does not have hands, I would imagine that the energy centers, the off-body ones, or even the on-body ones, are still present because the energy field is intact, even if a physical portion of ourselves is missing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would imagine that if the intent was to channel the energy through, your what you had of your arms or what have you, my guess would be it would be fine. It would still channel through because the energy is still there. It's not the energy field is not gone, the phantom limb syndrome and all those things you hear about. It's a very interesting question, though, and I have never heard that. But now you've given me a lot of food for thought. But my thought is that, yeah, why not? Let it flow. You know, Reiki, like you said, Reiki's not going to punish anybody. Oh, you don't have hands? Forget it. It doesn't work that way.
Right. No Reiki for you.
No Reiki for you.
Yeah, my first thought was the phantom limb as well. Like, yeah, because the energetic body is still there, and they could just intend through their energetic hands, I imagine, or through the eyes.
Yeah, go shi ho, absolutely. And I think it was Barbara who said about through the heart, and that's beautiful. Yeah. Sure, that's exactly right. So I think no matter what your physical state, you can most definitely be a Reiki channel. Absolutely. Otherwise, it wouldn't be given to us as something that's available to everyone. It didn't say, well, only if you have hands and only if you feel really good all the time, and et cetera, et cetera. There are no qualifiers there. So.
Exactly.
Did we talk about a healing crisis last week?
I don't think so.
Not in that.
I know something for me when I took my first Reiki Master class. A little bit after, I had for lack of a better phrase, and it's something I picked up from someone else, a healing crisis. You know, I felt, you know, like I had flu-like symptoms. It just kind of came on. I wasn't sure if it was food poisoning or whatnot. And, you know, lasted for a few days, and then when it cleared, and then I, you know, felt great afterwards. But I believe that there was some things there that needed to be released that, you know, the Reiki attunement actually released. So do you hear that from any of your students, or those coming back after an attunement, if they have any reaction to that?
Yeah, I do. I hear about it. I always tell them that this is something that could happen. I don't say that it, you know, will. It depends. It depends on how much you need to release and how well prepared you were for the class. I always provide recommendations prior to a class to prepare yourself spiritually and physically to receive the ability to channel the energy. And over the years, I have found that the students who prepare themselves with, you know, intent and focus and, you know, conscientiousness tend to do far better than those who do not. I remember one student came to class one time and she was hungover. And she said that. She said, you know, I really wasn't very good about preparing. I was overserved last night. Okay. And she had a pretty tough time with the healing crisis, as you say, Stephen. But I also think it just depends on the individual, how much stuff they have to clear, how much baggage. And but it's something I do go over in class, and it's something I usually tell clients about too, especially if I have one who really is carrying a lot, you know, and because you can tell in a session if things are coming up or, you know, releasing. So I think it's let them know that if you're not feeling well or a little tired over the next couple of days, it's perfectly natural. It's your body's way of releasing things that you don't need anymore. And if you have any questions, just give me a call. So yeah, this is something I think it's sort of our responsibility, at least my responsibility, to tell the person that this could happen. So.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Karen.
Oh no, I was just kind of agreeing. Yeah, that's what I tell my students, and I have had students have a healing crisis and call me, like I feel terrible.
Right.
Yeah, it's like you said that we might experience something, but I feel that, you know, and a lot of times it is this sort of like flu-like symptoms, and like it's just really, it's like drink more water, rest, and, you know, give yourself Reiki, and just keep, you know, pulling it up and letting it go.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I usually tell them, you know, about the water and listen to themselves. So if they just want to go home and go to bed, do that. I don't spend a lot of time on it. You know, maybe I should spend a little bit more time on it. But interestingly enough, what I've found is people end up having the issues before class. or before the session. So they will get sick. They'll the wheels are like falling off the bus before they get there, kind of thing. But they make it most of the time. And then it's a way like everything's just kind of coming up to the surface, lining up, to head out. But that's the thing that I see all the time, even with sessions. But it always ends up, it seems to work out for them. But it can almost deter, it can almost be a way for them to consider not coming to class because everything's just falling apart, kind of thing. But they'll make it, and then there begins the journey, so to speak. So.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, I tell people there's a 21-day cleanse. That's what I learned when I took Reiki. And some students, so it can be emotional, physical, or anything. And often it will be 3 days in each chakra. And so issues will come up. Students have told me they get home and all of a sudden their spouse is talking about money and relationships. And it's like, oh yeah, first and second chakra. So it's really interesting. Some people have had the physical flu-like symptoms. And I also go through a cleanse. So every time I do a class, and if I have one, 2 in a month, it's like, okay, just look out. But I tell people too that what comes up is what Spirit has deemed that you're ready to let go of. Of course, you can always say, no, I think I'll hang on to that a little bit longer. And because it'll come up again. It's not like if you don't let go now that you'll have it for the rest of your life. There's a funny story I share or illustrate it with. I pick up a chair and I hold it with one arm, and then some people say, oh yes, I let go of it, and they have it on this arm, and then they move it to the other arm, and then they say, oh, I really have let go of it, and then they put it over their shoulders, and I have let go of it. It's no longer in either of my arms. I'm holding it over my shoulders. And I said, so you can try to fool me, but you're not going to fool yourself. Just let go of it. You can always pick it up again later if you feel like you really need it. And with the beginning of my Reiki journey, with having lost a mother and had lots of other things, I felt like I was picking up this sorrow. It's like I think I grieved for my mother for 30 years till I finally got enough Reiki going through me to let go of that. And so I said, it's okay. It doesn't matter how long you keep things, but just know that at some point you might want to let it go, and it's all right if you don't. And I also suggest people journal about it if that's the kind of thing they like to do. And it's amazing. I did that and I could see the progress over time. It was really interesting. So, but I say 21-day cleanse. I don't call it a healing crisis, but healing crises can come up too. But usually I attribute those more to having physical symptoms. Mm-hmm. And they usually move through those easier than the others. The emotional and mental are more difficult.
Right. I usually go with the 21 days as well. I don't call it a cleanse. I was taught that it takes 21 days for the energies to completely assimilate, yes. Especially at Reiki 1, especially at Reiki 1, because they're going from not having that at all to this really high frequency energy. And it does take our physical selves time to assimilate, because our physical selves are dense and they don't respond as quickly as the rest of our energy does, So I always say 21 days. That's the way I was taught. And the way my teacher taught it was that it was 21 days as represented by Usui Sensei on the mountain. He was up there for 21 days. So yeah. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I just go with the 21 days for the energy to be completely assimilated and integrated into the system of the individual. And I always say, take extra good care of yourself, rest, extra, pure water, nutritious foods, Just be good to yourself. Self-Reiki every day. I'm real naggy about that. And, you know, to the point where they're rolling their eyes and going, oh, not the self-Reiki talk again. No, but it's super important. So, yeah, I do the 21 days too, Barbara. And I don't really call it a healing reaction, but it's just about taking care of yourself so that the energy can assimilate more efficiently into your system.
You know, it's funny, the youngest student I've ever had was 7 years old. And I had attuned the mom, and the mom says, you know, do you think, you know, my son really wants to be attuned and, you know, have like a mini class? And I said, sure. So I did the attunement on him, and he went, and I thought, wow, he's already integrated it. Adult is 21 days later at least. But it was, you could just see this connection that comes down into him, and he was ready to go. And I've talked to his mom once in a while recently, and this was in when I first moved here, so at least 17 years ago. And she says he still talks about that Reiki attunement and how he felt so different, and he could let go of so much. He had been bullied and different things, and so he was in his own. He just felt empowered, and it was like, boy, I wish adults could be like that. Wow, that was really something.
It's a lot easier when you're 7, though, right?
Yeah.
Not as much baggage.
Yeah, no tears.
True.
Wow.
I love teaching kids Reiki. I teach Reiki kids, you know, I'd say not regularly, but often enough. And it's just it's just so amazing to watch them. They just soak it up, and there's no self-doubt. There's no, you know, agonizing. Oh my God, this isn't going to work. You know, none of that. They just take to it, and they run with it, and it's just boom. It's instant, and it's just beautiful. It really is. So one of the most fun things I do with Reiki is teaching it to children. So.
Yes, me too. I love working with children.
Yeah. So.
I could see, I would really love to have whole families just come on a regular basis. I've had some, but, you know, I just think you could have one Reiki person in each, you know, group, family unit. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah. There was one family, I've attuned every member of the family, the husband, the wife, and the 2 children, and the dogs. So
yeah, I've done that too.
They're great people.
Dog too. It's
really great people. It's a lot of fun. So,
oh yeah.
Confessions of a Reiki master, right, Andrea?
Yeah.
So.
Well, do we go with another question, another little topic here, or do you guys want to wrap up? What do you guys want to do?
I would like to know a little more about if she's willing to share, because of my experiences in the hospital. I am not certified. I know there is certification where you can go into hospital rooms. I had an MRI, and I was thinking, even though I know I had people sending me Reiki and it was wonderful, but I was in that machine, and I thought, if only I had a Reiki master in here, I would feel so much better. And Andrea, you do offer services, like, don't you? Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, you know, gosh, I first did this for someone when I lived in Idaho. She had gallbladder surgery, and she asked if I would, you know, come and give her Reiki. Now, in those days, you know, I was just a normal Reiki master. I didn't approach the doctor or anything. I just went in after she had gotten back into her room after the procedure. So I went in there, I met her there, did a session with her there. Nobody had an issue there at the hospital. I'm sure I got maybe a couple funny looks, you know, as people passed the door. But she remarked or reported later that her doctor was really shocked that she did not need more pain medicine. and how quickly she was up and at 'em. So she was thrilled. And by the way, she just had another procedure, a couple of months ago. And I sent her distance Reiki during that. And it was the same sort of outcome. And it was a pretty major surgery. So it's always an honor, really. So I did take a class for medical Reiki. And I have been up here at CS Mott Hospital. The doctor for that, it was a surgery for a woman. And she had asked her doctor, and this is in conjunction with University of Michigan health system. And the doctor was very open to it. So I was able to go to pre-op as well as post-op, but not in the OR. So I haven't been in the OR yet. I would like to do that. I think that would be a real amazing experience. So we'll see about that. But I was going to tell you something else. Oh, so the other thing that people are asking me about is insurance. I posted in this medical Reiki group. I actually got Reiki covered with insurance here for a client of mine. And so I guess if that's okay, I'll talk to you about that for a minute, because that's kind of unheard of. It was special circumstances. This woman was in an automobile accident just over 2 years ago. And she called me and she asked me about the insurance, for Reiki, and if I thought Reiki would help her. And I said, oh, well, they don't cover it. And she says, well, no, we're in Michigan. And so it's the law that we have to bill the insurance. I can't pay for it out of my pocket. It has to go through the insurance. So I looked into it, and that is true. That's one of the reasons why we have really high auto insurance here. So when a person is injured in an automobile accident, they can have a medical claim, but it is actually the auto insurance that covers the medical bills. So this is a funny Reiki story too, because I told her, I said, well, I'll look into it. I'll work with you. We'll see what we can do. And so I got off the phone with her, and I thought, gosh, how am I going to make this happen? I've never done anything like this. Well, many years ago, when I was first in college, my side job was, I worked in a hospital, and my boss there had a mobile ultrasound business. So he taught me how to medical bill. So my side business was I would do medical billing for him when I wasn't at the hospital or in school. So I had a little bit of knowledge, but it was so long ago. But this, I just wasn't sure. So much has changed. So I thought, I really want to help her. I don't know what to do. How do I get the codes for this? How do you bill Reiki? They're called CPT codes. How do you bill Reiki for this? And I didn't know, and I was teaching a class that weekend. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to put this on my back burner, and I'll have to come back to it. So I go to teach this Reiki class, and we're going around in the circle, introducing ourselves, and right here to my right, medical biller, professional medical biller. Sat right next to me. I went, wow, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Reiki. So she actually, pointed me into, a couple directions, gave me some little hints there, and actually got it covered. So the company is paying for all of her Reiki sessions. So it is possible. And I think that, when I first talked to the adjuster on the phone, she was pretty not on board, let's just say. Had never even heard of Reiki, was very no. And so I put a packet together with information and a way to document this woman's progress with a rating system, a form that she would fill out each time that she came. And it's worked. And now her doctor wrote an actual prescription for Reiki. He on his prescription pad, Reiki 1 to 2 times per week for the next 3 months. So he's done that 2 times for her. And I don't know, but if it can help somebody else, but, you know, I think the next stop is, you know, major medical insurance.
Yes. Well, that's why this woman is doing the testing so that it can get covered.
Oh, wonderful. And where's she located, Barbara?
She's in Arizona.
Oh, is it Ann Baldwin?
No, her name is Melinda Connor.
Oh,
Melinda Connor. Okay.
Yeah. She's a PhD. She teaches energy work. I had given Stephen her name before, and she's going around the country and testing people. Her machine is like $63,000. One of them.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but she said she will give the names of people who pass the test to the Fortune 500 people, Fortune 500 businesses, and then they are going to work on putting it into the insurance plans. So,
Wow.
for coverage. So I said, yeah, I'm on board with testing. I'm like, yeah, just test me and take the data and run with it. It's exciting. I mean, now we have equipment that can measure what we're doing. I mean, but I think I always say that people can do whatever technology can, and I think after some point, our energy field goes up, and what we can do can't be measured. But then they'll have to get another machine to do that, because I think we're constantly evolving. So technology has a hard time keeping up with what we're doing.
Well, that's true. And, you know, it said that doctors told people to take aspirin, 80 years or something before they even understood how it worked. So, yeah, it's catching up. It'll get there.
Right. So,
Slowly but surely.
yes.
Beautiful. Well, I think we came to a good stopping point.
Yeah.
Everyone agree? Any last words, anyone, for today?
This is fun.
Yeah.
Good seeing
I
everyone.
hope everyone is coming up with more questions. I'm learning as much as I'm sharing. So this is great. I really
Yes,
love it.
it's really fun.
Yes.
I'm taking
Oh,
lots of notes.
Stephen.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the special.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
Oh.
almost forgot.
Yeah, so talk about your special. I'll have to put that on the boosted post at the end. I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
Oh, that's okay. Well, all of us here, I guess, if it's okay, I'll just talk about it. But we all decided we wanted to extend an offer to all of those who are tuning in. So through the month of October, any regular price session, it can be in our offices or it can be a distance session, but any regular price session can receive a 20% discount off the regular price. And the code for that, our secret code word, is Reiki Topics 20. Reiki Topics 20. Stephen's going to put it somewhere too, but Reiki Topics 20. So some of us have online scheduling. So if you schedule online, you can just type in Reiki Topics 20 in the coupon little space there. But if you schedule by phone, just say, hey, I saw you guys on Reiki Topics and I want that discount, Reiki Topics 20. And also, you know, for me, I decided if I have clients who have already booked in October and they see this, I'm going to allow them to take advantage as well. Just because they booked early, I don't want to penalize them. So if they see that and mention it at their appointment, they can certainly save the 20% too. So. Does anybody else have anything to add to that, or did I leave anything out?
It's one session, though.
Yeah, I think it's one session, and it's got to be completed in October, but it's the 1st, so we've got all month.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful offer. I want to take all you ladies up on the offer and get some amazing healing. I love it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you, ladies, for this evening. Thank you for joining in, spending time, sharing your wisdom. Thank you to our live audience for tuning in and watching episode 2 of Reiki Topics and Techniques. We'll be back next Monday, October 8th at 5 p.m. Pacific with episode 3 of Reiki Topics and Techniques. Blessings and namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.